Good morning, everyone. My name is Felice Starr. I work at Enterprise Holdings. I'm actually the regional recruiter for Enterprise Holdings for their Southern New England region. So what that means is I do all the hiring for our locations from Lower Westchester up to this area, the Hampton, North Haven area. So I oversee about 40 different locations, and I hire for 2 airport locations. A little bit about myself. I started with Enterprise almost 5 years ago in our entry-level position. I've worked my way up in the company. I've been promoted about 6 or 7 times during that time period that I've been working. I did anything from being an assistant manager, managing 4 branches of my own, and now I oversee the hiring for the region. So I am thankful to have been invited to speak with you today, and what I'm mainly going to focus on is just really kind of taking yourself out of the mindset of maybe school or maybe some past retail positions into a more professional setting, because there is a difference, and sometimes we don't necessarily realize that there's a difference in the way that we need to act and portray ourselves and climb up the ladder. And then at the end of my presentation, I try to cater it so that there is time for any questions that you might have, or just open discussion about anything I presented, or maybe something I didn't touch on that you thought might be necessary to speak about. So with that being said, I will get started. I tried to make it a little fun, creative. So there's a Star Wars theme, if anyone here is kind of a Star Wars fan. So how to succeed in your professional galaxy through the eyes of Star Wars. So not so long ago, an office not so far away, this is just more for fun, as you can see the lettering, but unemployment rates are not exactly where we would like them to be. The economy is not exactly where we want it to be. It's better than it was several years ago, but there's still a lot of people who are qualified and who have college degrees who are not employed. So I think it's super important that we understand how to act professionally, because once you get your resume down packed and you know how to interview and you're ready to go, and you get the job, that's great, but then what do you do once you get that job, and how do you keep it? And I was in that position not that long ago, starting with my company as a recent college grad, and kind of having to make that turn from working in a retail background to working in a corporate retail background. So a few things we're going to speak about. First is professionalism, which is, of course, uber important once you're kind of going into that more professional background. Communication, that's one thing that I definitely learned quickly that was very, very important, is how to effectively communicate with people who are your peers, your superiors, and that's something that maybe when you work in a different type of background, you don't necessarily have to change your communication style as much as you do when you enter into a professional setting. How to deal with change, promotions, and then of course short-term and long-term goals, and everyone's favorite, which is constructive criticism, how to receive it, how to deal with it, and handle it properly. So I have fun quotes throughout the way, so you can laugh even if you don't think they're funny, it's okay. Always in motion is the future, right? So we're always going towards this future that we don't know exactly what it's going to be. I did a range of 2000 to 2010 just because the data is better in decade blocks, but just to give an understanding, there were 1 billion more people, 5.4 times more internet users, and I can guarantee you that once we get to 2020, that number is probably going to be in the double digits. And then we have 9.5 times more cell phone users, and I can guarantee that number is also probably going to be in the double digits. What does this mean? That means you're being monitored more via the internet. I'll give you a quick example. I don't necessarily do this, but I do a lot of career fairs, and I deal with a lot of other companies, and I can tell you that when you apply to a job, they Google your name, they look up your Facebook, they look at your LinkedIn, and it's super accessible, whereas maybe 5 or 10 years ago, they would have to wait till they get back to an office to kind of look you up, they can just pull their cell phone out or their iPad out at a career fair or right after you interview, and they'll just, oh, okay, let me see what this person is up to or what this person's, been talking about. So that's the reason I'm bringing this up, is that technology has become very, very important. And when you're going for a job and once you're in that job, it's important. I've seen, unfortunately, people who have been terminated for things that they put on Snapchat or something they posted on Twitter. And they're like, oh, I didn't know, like I did it innocently. And I'm like, it doesn't matter, because your coworker that saw you do it innocently took offense to it and reported it to us at HR, and now we have to deal with it and look at where you're at because of a silly post. So it's super, super important to understand. So I like this quote a lot. A Jedi gains power through understanding, as Sith gains understanding through power. So the more you understand, the greater power you have. You can't just say, okay, I have all this power, I'm going to somehow just understand everything. So I think this is really important because if you go to work in a setting where you're part of a team, you want to be able to connect with everyone on that professional team. And I've had experiences with people who start working as part of a team and they feel like they can't fit in, or they don't understand exactly how to mesh with everyone, and they think, well, I'm just coming here to work, I don't need to talk to anyone, I'm just going to go do my job and I'm going to leave. I'm sorry. I just realized I'm blocking myself. I'm just going to do my job and I'm going to leave and nothing else is going to matter. That's not how it works. I'm very sorry to inform everyone. Even if you don't want to be best friends with your coworkers, which you don't have to be, you need to make some sort of attempt. An example, in my business, you get promoted based off of merit, right? Not off of your tenure. So people that I started with, I manage them now. And I have really good relationships with most of them, but if we didn't have a good connection that was professional in the beginning, imagine how difficult and awkward that relationship would be now. So just a few cheap ways to show appreciation. One, handwritten thank you cards. Maybe when you first start and someone was helping you, you can go to the 99-cent store and get them a thank you card and present that to them. Keeping track of birthdays has been a lifesaver. For me, I put everyone's birthday like into my Outlook pop-up, or I print it out. That way I can say like happy birthday and send a quick email, and people really appreciate it. I mean, my boss does it to me. I know I really appreciate it, but it's just the little things that count. Sometimes I work in an apartment with 3 other people, so sometimes I'll say, hey, I'm at Dunkin', do you want anything? Can I grab you something? And sometimes, my assistant will say, hey, please, I'm at Dunkin', do you want something? It goes both ways. I don't know about anyone else, but I like to cook and bake things, so I'll bake like a cake and bring it in. That's usually good. My assistant is into doing all that stuff with fondant and all that creative stuff that I can't do. So sometimes she'll bring in cookies that are like themed, which is nice. And it makes me think highly of her. I'm like, wow, she's engaged, she cares. Print out an article or a newspaper ad that you see. That's something that my regional vice president actually does, which I really appreciate. If he's going through Google News or something and he sees something that might be pertinent to my job or to me, he'll just send me the quick link and he'll say, hey Felice, I saw this, thought of you. I'm like, wow, that was really nice of you. And then just, be cordial. If someone has children or a dog, one of my district managers has a dog that is blind, unfortunately, and he's the most adorable little thing, and she loves him like that was her child. So when I see her, I'm like, how's Joey doing? Is Joey okay? And I know she appreciates it. So there's no mystical energy field that controls my destiny. I'm pretty sure that this quote is a little easy to understand, right? Nothing mystical is controlling your destiny. You control your own destiny, your actions, the way you act, that's what's going to control what you can do in the future. So I can send this link to everyone, but this is a link off of monster.com, and it's monster.com and a lot of other sites. I don't get paid by them. They have a lot of good resources for you to kind of do self-assessments, look through your own professional development, just to help you kind of understand where you're at. And there are a lot of really good articles that will help you develop professionally in addition to what you're hearing now, because this isn't going to be the end-all be-all. You have to continue to work on it. So, 10 things that employees want. and you can tell me if you disagree with any of these, but purpose, you want to have a sense of purpose when you're going to work. You want to have goals. Normally, I know I don't like to go into work and just be floating about. I want to know what my goal is. I like having responsibility and autonomy. I like flexibility, attention. The opportunity to innovate, I think, is really important now more than ever. Open-mindedness, transparency, and of course, I didn't forget the compensation bit because I think that's something that's important.
So something that's really important as you're looking to, as you march on towards whatever you're doing is just check your value system. Because certain employers, certain environments may not be conducive for you to progress and develop. Like I tell interns and grad students, you want to, link on to a company that's going to nurture your development, but also challenge you to be better and different. So.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I'm also going to definitely touch on that because you don't want to start working for a company where you're going to be stagnant and the things that you want aren't things you're going to get out of that company. And it's important that you figure that out or try to figure it out before you start working for that company through their resources. So for example, you can go onto any company's website, and I can tell you from experience that companies spend millions of dollars to have their websites designed so that the right information is on their website, so you can look through it and see, well, these are the company's core values. This is their job description. This is what they're offering. Is this what I can do? Is this what I want to do? It's very important. Dealing with compromise. So we can't all deal with absolutes, right? Everyone, you're not going to get your dream job right away with only the responsibilities that you want to do and no compromise. It's never going to happen, I'm sorry. So you need to learn how to deal with no absolutes. I have a chart up, hopefully everyone can see it, different strategies to deal with compromise. So, as you can probably guess and see, a non-assertive, non-cooperative way to deal with something is probably one of the worst ways to deal with something, and what that person does is they just avoid the task, they avoid the situation, and can anyone just guess why avoidance is bad?
Doesn't get done.
It doesn't get done, and you're going to be miserable. You're going to be ducking it the entire time. You're going to go into work, you're going to hide in your office or hide wherever you need to be, and you're not going to be enjoying your life. You're going to go home every day and probably go on Indeed and say, I need a new job, I hate this. So the best thing to do is the collaboration, right? To be assertive and to be cooperative. Being assertive is not a bad thing. In fact, I can guarantee you that most managers look for someone who is assertive. That's the person that's going to be a leader and take the reins, and when I'm not here, I know things are getting done because that person's assertive. But they're also cooperative. They're not trying to completely take over everything without consulting me or using the methods that we originally agreed on. So those two things are the best way to deal with any type of situation that you need to deal with, to compromise. Size matters not. Judge me by my size, do you? So don't neglect small jobs. Sometimes the small jobs are the most important jobs, and sometimes people who you don't think are that important are important. I'll give you an example. So I worked at an enterprise rent-a-car branch. I was a branch manager for a very large branch, with over 300 cars. I had over 10 employees, and I still would go out back, clean a car, clean up the lot, because at the end of the day, if my cars aren't clean, what does that mean? My customers are going to get a dirty car and they're not going to be happy, or they might have to wait extra long to get a car. If the lot isn't clean, then when someone comes to my place of business, they're going to think that we're not clean because it's not clean, or cleaning the bathroom. These small little jobs are what makes a difference. And to this day, anyone who's ever worked with me, I call it Clean Up Fridays. On Fridays, I do overhaul. I will clean the whole office. And I would say you can pitch in or you cannot pitch in, but the office is getting cleaned. And they appreciated that. Oh wow, my manager who oversees us, an assistant manager, all of our staff, is cleaning the toilet right now. And I'm that's fine.
So, and another big thing is, and I always like to push this, is resumes, right? I can look at somebody's resume and I may be wrong for this sometimes, but I will judge you based off what I see on paper. I will look at your resume and say this is sloppy, inconsiderate, it's not put together right, and I'm gonna throw those tags on you as wrong as it is. So just because I want you to understand that when an employer looks at it, when they're reviewing you, that's how they're gonna look at it. Because they only have 30 seconds to kind of decide that they got to stack like this and say, okay, who am I gonna then call to bring in for an interview? Because companies are spending a lot of resources to bring you in to go through that process. So if a resume is, if it has typos, it has misspellings, if it's not organized properly, you're gonna say, well, this person may not be as organized as I would like them to be. So your resume and how you appear at the interview all helps to shape how that employer starts to view you.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've noticed, because I've actually interviewed a lot of people, and he's absolutely right. The first thing I look at is, I'm like, okay, presentation, instantaneously. Attention to detail, I can't even stress that enough. You can never go through it with too fine of a point, because I promise you, when the employer looks at it, the first thing I do is I'm looking through, and I will do a quick scan for typos, misspellings, and it's instant, okay, and I'm on to the next one. You'd be surprised how fast it can happen.
Yeah, I would agree with both of you. It's very important. I would definitely also stress your appearance as well when you go into interview. So when you get picked and you come in, some things that really are pet peeves, when you have a really great resume, I'm sure you can agree, and then you come in and you don't know what's on your resume, you can't express it to me. When I'm interviewing you, I'm not reading your resume while I'm interviewing. I'm gonna look at it for 20 or 30 seconds, and I'm gonna look at you and I'm gonna ask you to walk me through it. So if you don't know what's on your own resume and you haven't read it and reread it, I don't care how nice your resume is or how great it sounds, I'm not gonna move you forward or hire you because I think that someone else did it for you and you have no idea what's on it. So that's a really good point. So I also would like to talk about the emerging gatekeeper role. Does everyone know what a gatekeeper is or who they normally are in a professional setting? So your gatekeeper is usually maybe the person who answers the door, the secretary, the executive assistant. I worked in a lot of other places before I started working at Enterprise, and I don't know if I ever realized how important that gatekeeper was until I started working here. Because I have an assistant and she will answer the door for me when someone comes to interview. She does a lot of my paperwork and she talks to my applicants a lot. She's very involved in the process, and me and her are tight because she's my assistant. So when I need advice on something, I'll go to her and I'll ask her advice. Or if I'm not in my office, I was on vacation last week, and interviewing was still happening and the process was still moving forward. And instead of coming to me, my regional vice president went to her because he knows that right after me, she has the next contact. And he said, well, can you tell me what you thought about this person? And he was like on the fence about the person, and based off of what my assistant said, she said she really liked them. He's like, oh, okay, great. So if you really like them and you think Felice really liked them, we'll move forward. So it's very, very important. I like to use the example when I have an interview come in. They come in, they're not in front of my office, and she usually answers the door, and then she'll come to me and she'll say, Felice, so-and-so is here to interview. I'll say, okay, thanks, and she'll usually give me like a thumbs up, or she's like, ew. And when she goes like this, I'm like, okay, well now I'm curious. Let me go take a walk and see what's happening. And 9 times out of 10, the person's like disheveled, or they're on their phone, or they're smacking gum in their mouth, and then it leaves a sour taste in you. I'm like, instantly, and it's true because we're humans and that's how we think, instantly I'm like, oh, this is going to be a horrible interview. This person's going to have to climb back up this mountain right now because I have this bad taste in my mouth from that first impression. So when you get, that's for the interview process, but also when you get hired, the same thing applies. My regional vice president has his own executive assistant, and I'm like this with her because I know when I need something, I'm like, Jen, it's your friendly neighborhood recruiter. How are you? Can we talk? And because we have a good relationship, guess what? She has a list of things this long to do, but because I call her and we have a good relationship, she puts me to the top of the list. So it's very important to understand that.
One thing I would actually like to stress, when you go for an interview, make sure that you treat everybody with the utmost respect. Because one of the things you said was, oh, I'll go for a walk real fast. when you go in for the interview, you don't know that she's going to be the person that's going to interview you. And if you go in there and you are rude or something to that, and then you get in the room, I promise you, it's the worst thing in the feeling in the world when you go in. You're like, oh, hello. Yes, treat everybody with respect, that you never know.
Yeah, very awkward. Sometimes my regional vice president might be walking by the door when the doorbell rings and he'll answer it. And he's your final interview, so you don't get to see him right away. But if you make it past me and the second interview, and then you go sit down with him, and you remember that you were rude to him when he opened the door for you in the first place, it's like, uh-oh, panic, instant sweat.
So just like we learned last week, you're on the watch the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so, you know, from that first phone call when you call and you're asking questions about stuff that you can find on the website, you know, oh, so what's the address that's on the website? You know, what do I park? They probably told you that in either an email or it's on the website. So just be mindful of the questions you ask too, even when you're on the phone.
Yeah, you just mentioned email, and it just brought back flashbacks. So usually when you go to interview for a company or you start the process with a company, they'll send you a pretty lengthy email as a first email because it has a ton of information about, you know, where to park and what to do, what to bring with you. So another red light for me is often when someone doesn't bring in like a resume or something, which I mentioned in my email. Make sure you have a resume with you, which is friendly of me because you should just know to bring your resume. And I also mentioned, you know, it's a professional dress environment. Make sure you're dressed professionally. And then someone shows up in non-professional dress and I'm like, did you read my email at all? Did you just look at it and like put it in the delete file? So that's definitely important. Does everyone know what a change agent is? I know it's not a term that's often used. So and you can see the quote, who's more foolish, the fool or the fool who follows him. So a change agent is a person who sees something wrong or something that's being done that shouldn't be being done, and instead of either ignoring it or joining in, they make an effort to change it moving forward. And not in a negative way, not to be mean or put someone else down, but because they can explain why it's the wrong thing. I think that's important, especially in a professional environment, because if you're new to a company, and maybe someone else who's new is starting with you and you see them doing something they shouldn't be doing, it's your opportunity to mentor that person and to say, hey, you know, I'm new too, but I don't think this is the right way. Let's figure it out together. Let's move forward together. That looks really good, one, professionally for you as a new person, and then two, towards that other person who can say, wow, maybe you saved their job because maybe they were doing something unethical, or maybe you just helped them out and they're going to appreciate that down the road. And it's also good if it's not someone who's new. If you join a company, and when you join a company, you're fresh, right? Fresh set of eyes. You just probably went through all the company's ethics training and how to do this right, how to do that right, and you see something being done that's not right, be the change agent. Be the person who, not in a threatening way, says, hey, I've learned this, and I don't think that's the right way to do it. Let's have some dialogue about it, because that's going to be appreciated in the long run. And you also just don't want to be associated with it. Maybe it's someone who works directly with you, and then you're associated with the bad thing they're doing. That could ruin your career. So, common traits of horrible bosses. Has everyone seen this lovely movie? It's very funny. So, someone who can't make decisions, maybe they lack actual talent, they don't really solve problems, they push them off to the side. Those who don't develop their teams. Everything is a crisis. This is my favorite one. You know, I got gum on my shoe. Oh my goodness, the world's ending. Or people who take credit for everything good and they actually avoid blame for anything bad that happens. I don't want to say that there are horrible bosses out there, but there are horrible bosses out there. So when you see things like this, or if you're involved working for someone who has some of these traits, maybe you need to, like you said, reevaluate. Can I grow here? Is this really what I want to be doing? Can this person help develop me? Because the worst thing in the world would be for you to wait 5 years and then realize that you've kept yourself in a situation that's not allowing you to grow professionally, and then you have to start all over again. So definitely just be on the lookout. Not all bosses are horrible, but there are some.
I have a question for you. So, how long do you think Because like when you get in there about that first 3 to 6 months, you're really doing a quality check, an interview. How long do you think, like a new employee should continue to, just reflect and do quality checks of the site or where they're at and their employees, their staff, their supervisors, things like that?
So I think if you're brand new, the first 3 months, you should run a list by yourself and say, okay, am I getting where I was promised? Is this really what I want to do? But then from that point, every 6 months you should be reevaluating your short-term and long-term goals, because you need to see if you're moving forward, or did they promise me something 6 months ago and I'm still not getting that? And I'm not saying, if you reevaluate in 6 months and you say, you know what, my supervisor is really just like taking credit for everything and placing the blame on us. Well, if that's the situation, hopefully you're working at a company where you can maybe go to another supervisor or direct report and say, hey, these are some of my concerns, or if you're comfortable enough to speak to your boss about it, these are some of my concerns. And then from there, you can see if things change or if they don't change. And if they don't change, you're probably not at a company that you should be at. So, more common traits. Erratic mood swings, right? So, good morning everyone, and then 10 seconds later, everyone's getting reamed out. Awful communication skills. Like I said, communication skills are very, very important, and someone who's in management should know that, and everyone doesn't communicate the same way. So, if someone is communicating with you in a way that you don't like it, and you tell them, and they still don't change, that's maybe a bad sign. And if you see that a lot of employees are in limbo, I think that's like the ultimate red flashing light. And, a lot of people who are like, oh, well, I was promised to be promoted, or I was promised this, and they're all kind of still floating in limbo. Warning, no clear expectations, just come to work every day, keep doing what you're doing a great job. If you hear that often, probably not great. Liars or unprincipled, and then people who are too arrogant, prideful, and inflexible. I don't think anyone wants to work in that type of environment. I know I don't. So don't be afraid to get dirty. That's kind of going in line with what I was talking about before. No job is too dirty for you to do. There's no job that's too small or too insignificant. Everyone does a dirty job. That's just how it works. I think that it's very funny when I hear people say, well, I'm just going to work in like this executive office and not do any dirty work. I'm just going to be behind my computer typing away like a princess and not doing anything. That does not happen at any job. Every single job, there's a little bit of getting dirty in it. I'm sorry. Even famous people have to get dirty sometimes. That's just how it works. Most managers actually have had to work in a job where they had to get dirty, get their hands dirty. So, words can come back to haunt you. Remember I was speaking about the internet and how it's everywhere. Your words can definitely come back to haunt you. You need to always watch your mouth and watch what you're saying and how you're saying it, because you can easily offend someone, even if you're trying not to, or maybe it's something that wouldn't offend you, but it offends someone else. So you have to be careful with the words that you choose. Do not badmouth your boss. I don't care if everyone's at the water cooler badmouthing your boss. Do not join them, because 1, your boss is going to find out. 2, one of those people is probably going to be the person to tell your boss. So don't badmouth your boss. Don't write or send anything that could be seen on the front page of Yahoo. So even if it's in an email, anything you email when you're at work is fair game, just so you know. Every time you hit the enter key, they have it. So even if someone says, oh my goodness, Patricia's being horrible today, whatever, you delete it and don't respond to it. If you think Patricia's being horrible, talk about it 10 blocks away and face to face. Do not talk about it at work. Don't disparage the company's customers, products, or services. I've seen a lot of bad things happen, not necessarily with my company, but with a lot of other companies, and I'm sure you see it floating around on the news, where people make Facebook pages or like YouTube pages of like oh, these are the horrible things customers do and stuff like that, that's an easy way for you to get fired and not find another job. So don't do stuff like that. Don't assume a private conversation will stay that way. I like to use the term that you should always vent upwards. So if you're having a horrible day, maybe you should talk to your boss about it, and you're still not going to badmouth anyone, but you don't want to talk to another coworker about it because you don't know how that person is going to take it or what that person is going through. But a manager is usually a little bit more experienced, and they've probably dealt with the same problems you're going through. Or if you have a mentor outside of work, if it's a family member, or maybe someone that you just met, a professional mentor from a previous job, talk to them about it. You don't want to be caught having a bad day and saying something horrible, and then the next 5 days are great, but the horrible thing you said is coming back to bite you. And do not get too social with social media. If they're your coworkers, that does not necessarily mean they're your friends. So you do not need to add them on your Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat, especially if you're going to post unprofessional things. If you do plan on doing that, make your Facebook page private, make everything private, make sure you don't add anyone.
And one of the biggest, so for me, I think, because like in our day and age, and this only applies to a few of you guys in here, and girls, it's just that, you know, you don't have to post everything. Like, your life doesn't necessarily have to be an open diary, so to say, because, like I said, like, this stuff is there forever, even if it's deleted. And Jeff would know.
Yes, my job.
The master, he's the webmaster here, so he knows.
Social media before the college, and I'm gonna tell you, it's like my mother always said: if you don't want anybody to read it, don't write it. Plain and simple. Just live by those words, and you'll be fine. But just along the lines, a very good rule of thumb, just like she said, is when you're at a job, most of the time, you probably shouldn't add your coworkers to your Facebook, Twitter, any of that. I personally tend to wait until I leave a job to add those people, and I tell them up front, like, I'm not gonna add you because we work together, just because I never know, like you said, you never know what's gonna set somebody off, and I don't even wanna take the chance.
Or what'll set you off.
Right.
Yeah.
You gotta keep yourself in mind too, like, oh wow, oh really? That's how you really feel. And you're just like, okay, well now it's awkward walking around in the hall, I see you at the water cooler, but I saw your post and you think it's all cool and dandy because you think we're friends.
Yeah, but then I'm grilling you from the sideline because I was pissed off at what you put on Facebook.
Right.
I think that's a really good idea. I actually recommend that to people. Do not add anyone. Tell them, I'm not trying to make this an awkward situation. It's not that I don't like you, it's that I don't add my coworkers. Or some people have a separate page like that's for work. So I have some employees who have like an Instagram that they have for like work, and they only use it for work. That's fine. I see a lot of you have had a chance to kind of look through this. This is real. This is something that really went up on Facebook, and I blacked out a lot of the bad stuff. But you have to be careful what you say because you just don't know who's watching it, and you don't know who's a friend of a friend.
Right.
I think
That's always a good one.
that's important because you might post something to your Facebook and you might be friends with one person and not realize that they're friends with someone else, or you might tweet something or like put it on your Instagram and then they find out about it and you're like, oh, well, you betrayed me, like you're evil, and it's like, no, you were not smart because you put that on there and you shouldn't have.
Screenshot you.
Yeah.
I would also like to add that LinkedIn is a great alternative. No, I won't friend you on Facebook, but we can be partners or connected on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I like to always throw a plug in for LinkedIn. Next to Facebook, it has the most users and members, which is a lot. So that is a great place to be professional, have your professional headshot, and make sure that it's very professional. And I say that because people put up pictures with their dog or something, and it's not for that. And then also be careful what you share on LinkedIn too, because there are things floating around there that are not professional.
It's public.
Yeah, it's public. So don't accept failure as an option. There is no trying. Right? There is trying, but there's no trying. You're going to give it your all, or you shouldn't be doing it. Because if you really want something, you should put your 100% into it. I like to say my work ethic is at 100% of the time. Why? Because this is my brand. This is my personal brand. When someone looks at that work, they're going to see Felice, and they're going to see what Felice put into it. So why would I only give 50%? I'm always going to give 100%. So not believing it is why you fail. I can't just say I'm going to give 100% and not believe in myself. I have to believe in myself. I have to come up with a plan. I can't just, say today's going to be a great day, but I have no plan and I don't know what I'm doing. I need to be organized and focused in order to succeed. And understanding that sometimes, as hard as you try and as much effort as you put into it, you might not do your best, but you learn from it. You don't make a mistake, right? It's a learning experience. And then the next time you do your best again. So keeping failure from being an option. It's only failure if you don't learn something from it. If you continue to make the same mistake, that's when you're failing. If you do something wrong, learn from it, get better, try again. Set realistic deadlines for yourself. We all know ourselves. I know me. I know that I cannot do work 2 weeks in advance. I need to do it a week in advance. That's just how my brain operates. I'm easy to go in the morning. I can go into work at 6:30 in the morning and spend the first 2 hours of my day just banging out reports. That's just how my brain operates. But if I tried to do that at 5 p.m., it wouldn't work. So I need to set realistic deadlines for myself. Please, if you try to do this 2 weeks out, it's not going to be quality because you're not going to do it 100%. So you have to do it a week out. You're better when you work early in the morning. So do your work early in the morning. Know yourself and be honest with yourself. Don't be afraid to delegate. When you first start a position, maybe you're not in a position to delegate. Once you start getting, some time under your belt, don't be afraid to delegate. Don't try to take everything on yourself. It won't be 100%, it won't be good. You have to train other people and delegate to them. That's how you grow as a professional. Don't be afraid to ask for help. It's not a sign of weakness. I love when people come and ask me for help because I'm like, yes, I can teach someone something. So don't be afraid for that. And avoid distractions, especially the cell phone. Huge pet peeve of mine is when I walk by and you're like on your cell phone and I'm just like, is someone dying? Like what's happening right now that you need to be on your phone right now? I bet you that you'll be super excited when you go back in 2 hours and you have 13 million text messages to answer. So put it to the side, put it on silent, put it on airplane mode, pretend it's not even there and do your work. Or, some people work better with something. Like, for instance, I mentioned in the evenings, not my best time. But if I'm listening to like some calming music, I can really focus and hone in on my work. So if that's something that works for you, don't be afraid to do that. My boss knows that, so he knows that I'm not just listening to music because it's fun. I'll say, hey, listen, I work better when I'm listening to music in the evening, so that's what I'm doing, and I'm getting my work done. So just know yourself and don't be afraid to talk about it.
I actually do the exact same thing. I actually tell my boss that I'm in headphone mode, which is when I'm in headphones, I'm concentrating on typing out and programming as much as I can. The other thing I wanted to make mention of was the setting expectations and realistic deadlines. That actually works 2 ways. Set them for yourself, but also do a thing called managing up, which is setting those same deadlines and expectations for your managers, getting them to understand certain ideas about, because sometimes they'll come to you and they'll say, oh, I need this and I need this now. And you're like, well, you have me on 10 other projects, let's figure out where we can fit that in. Communication is absolutely key. A manager sees it so much more favorably when you communicate ahead of time than when the deadline comes up and you're like, well, I didn't really get a chance to get to it. That's never seen well, ever.
It's true, and they'll probably say to you, well, why didn't you tell me something?
Yeah.
You knew you had all these other things going on, why didn't you say something? So that's a really great point.
And that's because, like she said, communication is key. You have to let them know. So for me, like if Dr. O'Connell, who's my larger boss, if he's sending me emails, can you do this? Can you come to this meeting? Can you come to that? And I'm like, yeah, I'll do it all. And you start saying yes. He's, Dr. O'Connell's that person where he's like, well, you said yes. You didn't tell me, yes, under these conditions, this is how I can do it. He's going to expect that you're going to give it your all.
Right.
So just
Yeah, so you're selling yourself short if you're saying yes to 10 things, but you can only really do 6 of those 10 things, and then the other stuff is kind of done in a bad way. So just never underestimate a job. I'll let you read through the quotes I'll read them all about. And sometimes let it go. Attachment leads to jealousy, the shadow of greed, that is. So if you aren't doing well at something, if your job is not working out, let it go. Because you're gonna wake up every day hating your job, you're gonna be jealous of your coworkers, everything's gonna seem like your world is falling down, you're gonna start looking around and like, well, my friends are doing this, and my friend has this job, and they're happy, and they're going on vacation, and I'm not, and for what? Let it go, find the right thing for you. So I have workplace phobias. So number 1 is getting yelled at by the boss. That's the number 1 phobia. Which is funny because if you go to most managers, most good managers, they will be surprised and they'll say, yell at you? Why would I yell at you? I would never do that. Like, you can talk to me, we can talk. Oversleeping is another big one, and then presenting is also usually another big one. Presenting is usually one of the top things that I hear people say they need to work on or they need to get better at. And I always say the same thing, the only way for you to get better at it is to practice it. So put yourself out there. When there's a presentation or something, say, hey, do you mind if I present on this part? Can I come up and do this section? Can I present at the next meeting? Or, sometimes if you're in a smaller location and you do like a morning huddle or something like that to get your day started, can I lead that? Little steps like that will definitely help you. It's funny because 8% was being caught in an inappropriate website and 10% were just meetings in general. So inappropriate websites just never. It shouldn't even be 8% because it shouldn't even be something.
Because, and not to interrupt, but.
No, go ahead.
So I work in the IT department. Everything you do at a workplace is tracked. If it's not work related, you should pretty much not do it on a work computer ever. I cannot stress that one enough. Yeah, I'm surprised that should be higher.
And like also be mindful. You guys are on IG, Instagram, Snapchat. If you open your phone up and you're on lunch and you think you're just chilling, you open your phone up and you're connected to the company Wi-Fi, you're a part of the network.
Yep.
So remember, if you're looking at something that might be questionable, you never know.
Don't even do it.
Yeah, just don't even do it.
And you can't control somebody else's post. So
That's true. And then hitting reply all. I'm just gonna mention this because it is like a huge pet peeve of mine. Please, before I have a feature on my email and it's a spell check feature and it'll make me double click send. And it's not because I don't think I can spell. It's because it's a way for me to remember, wait a second, let me make sure my email is good before I send it out and I'm not sending it to people who I shouldn't be sending it to. Not that it's inappropriate, but maybe it's something confidential. So Outlook has that feature, if any of you use Outlook. If not, make it a habit that before you hit send, you double check your email quickly, because I can't tell you how embarrassing it is for someone to reply all on something that was private or confidential or
just a one-on-one conversation.
Yeah.
So for some people, we might be like in a larger group, we might be talking about something, and then the boss may say, hey, talk to Wiley about something. I'd be really upset if somebody replies all and says, Wiley, can we meet? I'm like, well, wait a second, that's like a you and I kind of conversation. So.
Definitely can cause workplace hostility. Accept constructive criticism. You're going to get it, period. No one is perfect, even though you might think you're perfect, or you might think you're doing a really great job at something, and you might be doing a really great job at it, but you could get better. And that's what a good manager will do, is they will want you to be better, so they'll give you constructive criticism. And you should take it openly and honestly, and if you really don't understand it, you should probably say that you don't understand it, instead of saying like, no, I do that well. What are you talking about? Okay, whatever. Because if I give someone constructive criticism, I expect a change. So if they don't change, I'm like, I think they didn't listen to me, but maybe they didn't understand my constructive criticism and they didn't say anything. So that's like, wait a second, I have one perception of it, you have another perception of it, poor communication. Follow directions, don't try to reinvent the wheel. If you're given a directive and you think there's a better way to do it, then communicate that and talk about it. Don't just go and do it your own way, because usually the person giving you a directive has a reason for the way they want you to do it. And then if you just completely change it, I'm like, well, this person, communication is listening also, right? So this person doesn't listen, they don't communicate well. Don't fear the hard jobs. If you are able to kind of put yourself out there and do a job that's maybe a little bit more difficult than what you're usually doing, or attempt to do it, your manager is going to appreciate that, and you'll feel strengthened because of that. Wow, I was able to do that. I was able to kind of pool my resources together and get this hard job done that I've never been able to do in the past. And that's what I have for you. Does anyone have any questions? I know our time is...
I mean, most of you guys probably have a class at what, 12, 15 or something like that?
10.
12, 10. So if you guys have a couple minutes for questions, or we will give Ms. Starr a round of applause because she did a great job.
Thank
How do you get over, what steps do you take to get over, like if you had an assignment, but you fell at it? You took on an assignment that you kind of knew that you weren't that good at, but you were asked, and so you was like, okay, I'm gonna take on the challenge. And it doesn't work out the way that you planned. And your boss will tell you, like, why would you do that if you knew that you weren't good? But they were asked, but it was active. How do you get over that?
I think the best way is to have a conversation with your boss and be honest with yourself. Because if you took it on, some part of you felt that you could do it, but maybe you could have pooled your resources, maybe you could have reached out to someone to try to do a better job at it. So be honest with yourself about that, and then tell your boss that, listen, I truly thought I could complete this task, and I understand that I probably should have reached out to someone and maybe gotten a few more resources so I could do a better job at it. So I take responsibility for that, but now I know, and the next time I'll make sure I do that.
And one other thing you could do is, and it's in the world of business, it's always going to loop back to communication. If you, once again, be honest with yourself during that process of working on the project, and if you're like, okay, I'm really struggling with this, do not be afraid to go to your boss and say, hey, I know I took this on, and it was a little bit more than I thought I could take on, but I'm having some issues. Do you have any ideas what I could do to make this a little bit easier on myself? They can point you in the right way for resources. They themselves could be a resource, and they're going to be perfectly fine with doing that.